Imagine being at a wedding where joy fills the air, laughter echoes through the halls, and the celebration is in full swing. But beneath the surface of the festivities, disaster looms. The wine is gone. In a culture where hospitality defines honor, this moment threatens to ruin everything. Yet amid the rising panic, one quiet figure stands ready. Jesus, not yet fully revealed to the world, is about to change everything. But how? What miracle could possibly avert this disgrace? In this moment of quiet crisis, we see more than just the shortage of wine. We see the beginning of something profound, a glimpse of divine power hidden in plain sight. What happens next is not just a solution to a social embarrassment, but a revelation of glory, subtly woven into the fabric of everyday life. Can you sense the anticipation? The air is thick with tension, and something extraordinary is about to unfold that will forever change those who witness it. The wedding at Cana was a lively, joyous occasion. Music and laughter filled the air, while guests from the village gathered to celebrate the union of two families. In Jewish culture, weddings were not just personal events but communal celebrations, often lasting several days. The hosts were expected to provide generously for their guests, especially when it came to food and wine. Wine held significant social and cultural value, symbolizing joy, abundance, and God's blessings upon the couple. The guests were enjoying the feast, drinking and celebrating in high spirits, completely unaware of the crisis that was brewing behind the scenes. Everything appeared perfect, but the unthinkable was about to happen. In the back rooms, the servants exchanged worried glances as the wine ran dangerously low. For the hosts, this was a matter of honor. To run out of wine would bring shame, casting a dark shadow over the celebration and damaging the reputation of the families involved. The cultural significance of wine in Jewish weddings went beyond mere enjoyment. Wine symbolized joy and was often used in religious rituals. To fail in providing it was more than just poor hospitality. It was a serious social faux pas that would embarrass the couple and their families for years to come. The feast was reaching its peak, and the guests were still expecting more. The quiet panic of the servants grew as the joyous mood became increasingly fragile. In the midst of the celebration, Mary, the mother of Jesus, was present, observing everything. Though not involved in the logistics of the feast, her heart was sensitive to the impending disaster. She noticed the servants' anxious movements and realized that the wine was running out. Mary had always believed in her son, having seen his wisdom and power in quiet moments at home. This, she sensed, could be the perfect moment for him to reveal something extraordinary. Mary, knowing that only Jesus could solve this crisis, approached him quietly. She didn't make a dramatic request, but simply stated the need. They have no wine. Her words were both a plea and a demonstration of faith. She trusted that Jesus, though not yet publicly revealed, could do something miraculous. Her faith was steady, born out of years of watching her son live a life that was anything but ordinary. This was more than a simple problem. It was an opportunity. Jesus, however, responded in a way that seemed reluctant. "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His words, though respectful, carried a deeper meaning. Jesus was aware that once he began performing miracles, his path toward his ultimate sacrifice would begin. This was not just about turning water into wine, it was about beginning the journey that would lead to the cross. His hesitation reflected the weight of what was to come. Despite Jesus' response, Mary's faith did not falter. She understood the deeper significance of his words, but also trusted that he would act. She turned to the servants and gave a simple command: "Do whatever he tells you." Her quiet confidence set the stage for the miracle that was about to unfold. The servants, though confused, prepared themselves to follow whatever instructions came next. The atmosphere shifted as anticipation quietly built among those who knew. As the music continued to play and the guests remained unaware of the potential disaster, Jesus looked around. His time had not yet fully come, but his compassion and his mother's faith moved him to act. This moment, though small in the eyes of the wedding guests, would mark the beginning of his public ministry. What was about to happen would reveal his glory in a quiet yet profound way that only a few would truly understand. As the servants whispered frantically behind the scenes, the gravity of the situation became clear. The wine had run out, and with it, the host's reputation hung in the balance. The celebration, which had started so joyously, was now on the verge of a social disaster. Running out of wine at a wedding was more than a logistical problem. It was a matter of deep embarrassment in Jewish culture. Honor and hospitality were at stake. Mary, ever perceptive, had already noticed the servants' distress. She was aware of the potential disaster that loomed. Her concern was not only for the reputation of the families involved, but also for the joy of the celebration itself. The wedding feast, a symbol of communal joy and God's blessing, was about to be overshadowed by a crisis that no one could solve except her son. Her heart was filled with both maternal care and unwavering faith. Approaching Jesus with calm confidence, Mary stated the issue directly. They have no wine. She didn't demand a solution, she simply made the need known. Her words were laced with a deep trust that Jesus could and would do something. Though he had not yet performed any public miracles, Mary knew the potential her son held. This was the moment, she believed, where he would reveal his power, even if in a small, quiet way. Jesus, however, seemed hesitant. "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come," he replied. His response was respectful, but it carried a deeper significance. Jesus was fully aware that performing this miracle would set in motion a series of events leading to his eventual crucifixion. His hour referred to the ultimate purpose of his coming, the salvation of humanity through his death and resurrection. Despite his initial reluctance, Mary's faith did not waver. She didn't need to understand all of the details or the timing of Jesus' mission. She simply trusted that he would do what was right. Turning to the servants, she said, "Do whatever he tells you." Her words were both an instruction and a profound act of faith. She had done her part, and now she left the rest in Jesus' hands. The servants, though confused, were ready to obey. As the servants waited, the tension hung in the air. They didn't know what to expect, but they sensed that something extraordinary was about to happen. Their obedience, though seemingly simple, was about to be the key to a miracle. They had no idea how their actions, filling jars with water and following Jesus' commands, would result in something that would forever change the course of this celebration. The stage was set for divine intervention. Jesus, moved by compassion and the quiet faith of his mother, decided to act. His time had not yet fully come, but this moment would be the beginning. He saw the 6 stone jars used for ceremonial washing, each capable of holding 20 to 30 gallons of water. These jars, meant for purification, would now be used for something far greater, a symbol of transformation and abundance. His quiet instructions to the servants would soon result in something miraculous. "Fill the jars with water," Jesus instructed. The servants, though puzzled, obeyed without hesitation. They filled the large jars to the brim, unsure of what would come next. They didn't know how water could solve the problem of the wine, but they followed his command. With the jars now filled, the servants stood back, waiting for Jesus' next instruction, unaware that they were about to witness the first miracle of his public ministry. Jesus' initial hesitation was rooted in his understanding of his mission. "My hour has not yet come," he told his mother. This was not just a refusal, but a statement filled with deeper meaning. Jesus knew that performing this miracle would set in motion his public ministry, leading him toward the ultimate hour of his crucifixion. His reluctance stemmed from the realization that once he began revealing his power, the path to the cross would officially begin. Mary, however, knew her son's heart. Though his words seemed hesitant, she remained confident that Jesus would act. Mary's deep faith in Jesus allowed her to respond with quiet assurance. She didn't argue or try to persuade him further. Instead, she turned to the servants and said, "Do whatever he tells you." Her faith in this moment reflected a profound trust in Jesus' ability to intervene at the right time, even if his initial response appeared uncertain. Jesus, moved by his mother's unwavering faith and his compassion for the hosts, decided to act. His time for full revelation had not yet come, but this moment was an opportunity to reveal a glimpse of his divine nature. The wedding crisis presented a perfect moment for Jesus to show that he was not indifferent to human needs. His miracles were always about more than the act itself. They pointed to something far deeper, revealing his mission of transformation and renewal. Nearby stood 6 large stone jars used for Jewish ceremonial washing. These jars, each capable of holding 20 to 30 gallons, symbolized the Old Covenant practices of purification. Jesus saw them and understood that they could serve a new purpose. With a calm but authoritative voice, he instructed the servants to fill the jars with water. The servants, though puzzled, obeyed. They were about to witness something extraordinary, though they had no idea of the miracle that awaited them. As the servants filled the jars, the tension grew. How could water possibly solve the problem of a wine shortage? Yet, their obedience laid the foundation for a divine intervention. Jesus didn't make a grand gesture or call attention to himself. He worked quietly, instructing the servants to draw some of the liquid and take it to the master of the banquet. As the servants complied, the transformation had already taken place, though they didn't yet know it. When the master of the banquet tasted the wine, he was astonished. Expecting only water or the last remnants of diluted wine, he was instead greeted with a drink of extraordinary quality. Without knowing what had taken place, he called the bridegroom and praised him, saying, "Everyone brings out the best wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink, but you have saved the best till now." The miracle was complete, but only a few understood its significance. For the servants and disciples who had witnessed the event, this was a moment of revelation. The ordinary had become extraordinary, and water had turned into the finest wine. This miracle was not just about solving a temporary problem. It was a sign of who Jesus truly was, the Messiah. Though his public ministry had only just begun, this first miracle was a quiet but profound declaration of his divine power. The disciples' faith was strengthened as they realized they were following the Son of God. This miracle, though performed at a wedding, foreshadowed the greater miracles to come. Jesus, by turning water into wine, revealed that he had the power to transform not only physical elements, but also lives. The symbolism was clear. Jesus had come to bring joy, abundance, and spiritual renewal. This was just the beginning of his ministry, but it set the tone for everything that would follow. A ministry defined by love, transformation, and the revelation of God's glory. As the servants followed Jesus' instructions, they could not have imagined what was about to unfold. They had filled the 6 stone jars with water, completely unaware of the miracle that was taking place in front of them. What had been ordinary water was now being transformed into something extraordinary. Jesus didn't touch the water or perform any grand gestures. He simply gave a quiet command, and in obedience to his word, the miracle began. Water, one of the simplest elements, had turned into wine. The transformation was not only miraculous because it was unexpected, but also because of the quality of the wine. When the master of the banquet tasted it, he was astonished. Expecting nothing more than mediocre wine or perhaps even water, he was instead greeted with the finest wine he had ever tasted. This wine was far superior to what had been served earlier, prompting him to exclaim, "You have saved the best till now." He had no idea that he was tasting the result of a divine miracle. For the servants, the transformation of water into wine was a moment of profound realization. They had been the ones to fill the jars with water. They knew firsthand that no wine had been present, and yet they had just witnessed an impossible transformation. Jesus had not only provided for the immediate needs of the wedding, but had done so in a way that revealed his divine power. This was more than just a party trick. It was a sign of who Jesus truly was. The disciples watching from the sidelines were filled with awe. They had only recently begun following Jesus, and this was the first time they had seen him perform a miracle. This moment confirmed what they had already suspected. Jesus was no ordinary teacher or rabbi. He had the power to change the natural order, to bring about miracles that defied explanation. Their faith in him was strengthened, and they knew that they were following someone with divine authority. This miracle also carried deeper symbolic meaning. Water, often associated with purification in Jewish customs, was transformed into wine, a symbol of joy, abundance, and blessing. Jesus was not only meeting a physical need, but was also pointing to the greater spiritual transformation he would bring. Just as he had turned water into wine, he would later turn sorrow into joy, sin into forgiveness, and death into life. This miracle was a glimpse of the greater work he would accomplish. For the guests, the wine was simply a gift, an unexpected joy that allowed the celebration to continue. They had no idea that they were drinking a miracle. But for those who knew what had happened, this was a revelation. Jesus had taken the ordinary and made it extraordinary. This was a sign of what his ministry would be like. A ministry of transformation, where the mundane was touched by the divine and became something far greater than anyone could have imagined. This was just the beginning. Jesus' public ministry was now underway, and this first miracle set the tone for everything that would follow. His miracles would always point to something deeper, revealing not only his compassion for human needs, but also his divine authority. He had come to bring about a new kind of kingdom, one where the old ways were transformed into something new, just as the water had been transformed into wine. The miracle of turning water into wine was more than just a demonstration of power. It was a sign of the new covenant that Jesus would establish. Just as the wine symbolized joy and blessing, so too would Jesus bring a new era of spiritual abundance. This miracle pointed ahead to the Last Supper, where Jesus would offer wine as a symbol of his blood, shed for the forgiveness of sins. The transformation at Cana was a foretaste of the greater transformation that would come through the cross. As the master of the banquet tasted the wine, he was astonished. The flavor was rich, bold, and far superior to what had been served earlier. He called the bridegroom over and said, "Everyone brings out the best wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink, but you have saved the best till now." He had no idea that what he tasted was a miracle. The finest wine had come from water. For the bridegroom, this moment was one of relief, though he didn't know what had transpired. He had no idea that a crisis had been averted or that his wedding was saved by divine intervention. He only knew that the master of the banquet was praising him for providing excellent wine late in the feast. While the guests continued celebrating, unaware of the miracle, only a few understood the significance of what had just taken place. This revelation was about more than just wine. Jesus' act of turning water into wine was a quiet but profound declaration of his divine power. Though the master of the banquet didn't know the full story, the servants and disciples did. They had witnessed the transformation firsthand. What had begun as a potential disaster had turned into a moment of divine revelation where Jesus subtly revealed his glory. This miracle, though understated, pointed to something far greater. The quality of the wine was symbolic. Jesus didn't just turn water into any wine, he created the finest wine, a symbol of abundance and blessing. In Jewish tradition, wine was more than just a drink. It represented joy, celebration, and the blessings of God. By saving the best wine for last, Jesus was foreshadowing the ultimate joy and fulfillment that he would bring through his life, death, and resurrection. This moment pointed to the new covenant he would establish. For the disciples, this was a turning point. They had followed Jesus because they believed he was the Messiah, but now they had seen his power firsthand. This miracle was more than just an act of kindness at a wedding. It was a sign that Jesus was the Son of God, capable of performing miracles that defied natural law. Their faith, which had been growing steadily, was now strengthened as they realized they were witnessing the beginning of something extraordinary. The servants, too, were impacted by the miracle. They had filled the jars with water and served the wine, fully aware of the transformation that had taken place. Though they may not have fully understood who Jesus was, they knew they had witnessed something divine. Their quiet obedience had allowed them to play a role in this revelation, and their lives would never be the same. This moment marked the beginning of Jesus' public ministry, and they had been a part of it. The best wine saved for last carried deeper spiritual significance. Jesus' ministry would unfold in a similar way. While the world had seen many prophets, teachers, and leaders, the greatest revelation of God's love and power would come through Jesus. Just as the guests at the wedding were surprised by the quality of the wine, the world would soon be astonished by the grace and salvation offered through Christ. The miracle at Cana was just the beginning. In saving the best for last, Jesus foreshadowed the ultimate revelation of his glory, which would come through his death and resurrection. The wedding at Cana was a moment of joy and celebration, but it pointed toward the greater joy that would come through the cross. Jesus' ministry would culminate in the greatest act of love the world had ever seen, the sacrifice of his life for the salvation of humanity. The best was truly yet to come. The miracle at Cana was more than just a way to save a wedding from disaster. It was rich in symbolism and spiritual meaning. Wine in Jewish tradition was not only a sign of celebration, but also a symbol of joy, blessing, and divine provision. By turning water into wine, Jesus was showing that he had come to bring spiritual joy and renewal to humanity. This miracle was a foreshadowing of the deeper transformation he would bring to those who believed in him. The stone jars used for ceremonial washing were also significant. In Jewish law, these jars held water used for purification, symbolizing the cleansing of external impurities. Jesus' transformation of this water into wine pointed to a deeper spiritual truth, that he would bring a new kind of purification, not through ritual washing, but through his blood, which would be poured out for the forgiveness of sins. This act was a preview of the new covenant that Jesus would establish. This miracle also pointed forward to the Last Supper, where Jesus would again use wine as a symbol of his blood. Just as he transformed water into wine at Cana, he would later transform the meaning of wine itself, using it to represent the sacrifice he would make on the cross. The joy and abundance that the wine brought to the wedding feast were a sign of the spiritual abundance that Jesus would bring to the world through his death and resurrection. For those who witnessed the miracle, it was a sign of Jesus' divine power and his role as the Messiah. But for Jesus, this was just the beginning. The transformation of water into wine was a small glimpse of the greater transformation he would bring to humanity. taking people from spiritual death to new life, from emptiness to fullness, from sin to salvation. This miracle revealed not only his compassion, but also his mission to bring about a new era of grace and redemption. The disciples, who had just begun to follow Jesus, were deeply affected by what they had seen. This miracle was not just about wine, it was about revealing Jesus' identity and his purpose. Their faith, which had already been sparked by his teachings, was now strengthened as they realized that they were following someone who had the power to change the course of history. This was no ordinary teacher. This was the Son of God, the one who would bring salvation to the world. The servants, too, were profoundly impacted by the miracle. They had played a role in its unfolding, even though they didn't fully understand what was happening at the time. Their quiet obedience had allowed them to witness something extraordinary, the first public sign of Jesus' divine authority. They may not have grasped the full significance of the event, but they knew that they had been a part of something far greater than themselves. This miracle at Cana also served as a reminder that Jesus cares about the details of our lives. The issue of the wine shortage might have seemed trivial to some, but it mattered to the people at the wedding, and so it mattered to Jesus. His willingness to intervene in this situation showed his compassion and his desire to bring joy and blessing into every area of life. This same care and compassion continue to be hallmarks of his ministry today. The transformation of water into wine was not just about meeting a physical need, it was a symbol of the greater spiritual transformation that Jesus offers to all who believe in him. Just as he turned ordinary water into extraordinary wine, he can take the ordinary aspects of our lives and transform them into something beautiful and meaningful. This miracle was a glimpse of the abundant life that Jesus promises to those who follow him, a life filled with joy, purpose, and divine blessing. Mary's role in this miracle cannot be overlooked. Her faith in Jesus, her willingness to trust in his timing and his way, was instrumental in the unfolding of this event. Mary didn't know exactly how Jesus would solve the problem, but she believed that he could. Her quiet faith, expressed through her simple words to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you," was a powerful example of trust in God's ability to work, even when the situation seemed impossible. Mary's faith was not passive, it was active. She didn't just hope that something would happen, she took steps to make it possible. She brought the need to Jesus, and then she instructed the servants to be ready to obey. In doing so, she demonstrated the kind of faith that moves mountains, a faith that doesn't demand explanations, but simply trusts that God is able to do what seems impossible. Her journey of faith was one that would be mirrored by many who followed Jesus. The servants also played a crucial role in this miracle. Though they didn't understand what was happening, they obeyed Jesus' instructions without question. Their obedience was an act of faith, even if they didn't fully realize it at the time. By filling the jars with water and drawing out the wine, they became participants in the miracle. This reminds us that God often uses our simple acts of obedience to bring about his plans in ways we could never have imagined. This moment was a turning point for the servants. They had witnessed something extraordinary, something that defied human logic and natural laws. Their participation in the miracle gave them a front-row seat to the revelation of Jesus' power. Though they were not the main characters in the story, their quiet faithfulness was essential to the unfolding of the event. Their journey of faith had just begun, and they would carry the memory of this moment with them for the rest of their lives. For Mary, this miracle was the beginning of her son's public ministry, the first of many signs that would reveal his glory. Though she didn't fully understand the path that lay ahead, she trusted that God's plan was unfolding exactly as it should. Mary's journey of faith was one of constant trust and surrender, even when the road was difficult. She believed in Jesus from the very beginning, and her faith was rewarded as she witnessed his first public miracle. The disciples, too, were on a journey of faith. They had left everything to follow Jesus, trusting that he was the Messiah, even if they didn't fully understand what that meant. This miracle was a confirmation of their faith, a sign that they were on the right path. They had seen Jesus teach and call them to follow him, but now they had witnessed his power firsthand. Their journey of faith was just beginning, but this moment would strengthen their resolve to follow him. In this story, we see how faith and obedience go hand in hand. Mary's faith in Jesus led her to instruct the servants to obey, and their obedience led to the miracle. This pattern is repeated throughout the Gospels, faith and obedience working together to bring about God's will. The journey of faith is not always easy, but it is always rewarding. As we trust and obey, we too become participants in the miracles that God is doing in the world today. This miracle at Cana was a journey of faith for everyone involved. Mary, the servants, the disciples, and even the bridegroom, though he was unaware of it at the time. Each person played a role in the unfolding of God's plan, and each one was transformed by the experience. This reminds us that we are all on a journey of faith, and as we trust and obey, we will see God's power at work in ways we never expected. The miracle at Cana was more than just a kind gesture. It was Jesus' first public step towards his destiny. In performing this quiet miracle, Jesus subtly revealed his divine power, marking the beginning of a journey that would culminate in his death and resurrection. Though only a few witnessed the transformation, this act signaled the unveiling of his hidden glory. The path to the cross had begun, and this miracle was the first glimpse of the profound destiny awaiting him. Jesus' reference to his hour in response to his mother hinted at the future. His hour referred not to this wedding feast, but to his eventual crucifixion, when his true mission would be fully revealed. In turning water into wine, Jesus symbolized the transformation that would come through his death. The transformation of sinners into saints, the ultimate redemption of humanity. This miracle, though small, pointed toward the greater glory that was yet to be unveiled through his sacrifice. For the disciples, this miracle solidified their faith in Jesus. They had already followed him because they believed in his teachings, but now they had seen his divine power firsthand. This first sign was a confirmation that Jesus was not merely a wise teacher, but the Son of God. The hidden glory they witnessed at Cana was only the beginning of the revelations they would experience as they followed him on the path toward his ultimate purpose. Though many at the wedding had no idea that a miracle had taken place, for those who knew, this was a moment of deep significance. Jesus had taken something ordinary, water, and transformed it into something extraordinary, wine. This mirrored the transformation that Jesus would bring to the world. His ministry would take the broken, the sinful, and the lost and transform them into something new, bringing life, hope, and redemption where there had been none. This miracle was a quiet but powerful revelation of Jesus' mission. His decision to intervene in such a seemingly trivial situation showed his compassion for people, even in the small details of life. But more importantly, it foreshadowed the greater act of intervention he would make on behalf of all humanity. Just as he turned water into wine, he would transform the lives of all who believed in him, offering eternal life through his death and resurrection. The hidden glory of this moment pointed to the greater glory that would be revealed at the cross. The disciples saw a glimpse of Jesus' power at Cana, but the full revelation of his glory would come when he laid down his life for the salvation of the world. The wine that flowed at this wedding symbolized the blood that would soon be poured out for the forgiveness of sins. This miracle was the beginning of the path to the cross. The journey toward the cross would be filled with miracles, teachings, and profound moments of revelation. But this first miracle, the transformation of water into wine, set the tone for all that was to come. It was a sign that Jesus' ministry would be about more than meeting physical needs. It would be about transforming lives. His hidden glory would be revealed step by step until the day when all the world would see the fullness of his power. Jesus' first step toward his destiny was quiet but significant. The wedding at Cana was a celebration, but it pointed toward a greater celebration: the redemption of humanity. The path to the cross had begun, and each miracle, each teaching, would bring Jesus closer to his hour. The hidden glory revealed at Cana was a promise of the greater glory that would come through his death and resurrection, the ultimate act of love that would change the world forever. What if the wine of your life has run out? What if, beneath the surface of your celebrations, you are silently holding a crisis of your own, hoping for a miracle? Just as Jesus intervened quietly at Cana, he stands ready to intervene in your life today. The transformation you long for might be closer than you think, but are you ready to trust him with your ordinary? To watch him turn it into something extraordinary? The best indeed is yet to come. Don't let this moment pass you by. What Jesus did at Cana was more than a miracle. It was a promise. A promise that he can take what is empty and fill it with joy, what is broken, and make it whole. Are you ready for your water to be turned into wine? Subscribe now, join us on this journey, and discover the divine transformation waiting for you. The miracle is already in motion. Are you part of it?